Hello again, Chuck Vipperman with Chuck's Common Sense. Every time I get the notion, I'll go ahead and upload one of these video versions of Chuck's Common Sense where, in some of these cases, pictures added to the story will make the point even a little bit better. By the way, occasionally you'll see me holding this. Most people have a stress ball. I have a stress hockey puck. Greensboro Monarchs 1994-95 season. Anyway, sometimes I'll hang around with that. That is neither here nor there. My concern today is about media integrity. I know that seems oxymoronic in these days, and we are seeing more egregious evidence of that because of a very emotional and very necessary debate that we are having over the current presidential administration's immigration policies. It is emotionally charged, and as such, it is very easy to demagogue the issue, to try to manipulate emotions, to try to use misleading characteristics to move the narrative in your favor. That's fine if you're running a political campaign. That's fine if you are an activist. That's fine if you are an advocate for immigrants. It is not fine when you are the supposedly unbiased mainstream media. Biggest example came this week, courtesy of Time magazine. It's a infamous June 12th photograph of a 2-year-old Honduran girl. It's become really the most visible symbol of this immigration debate under the policy enforced by the Trump administration prior to his executive order earlier this week. Those who crossed illegally were criminally prosecuted. That resulted in the separation of any children they may have had. There were very little, and as I understand it, almost none to speak of in terms of places where families can be housed while the mother and or father are awaiting a criminal proceeding. So we've all seen the images of children in cages, so to speak, more accurately detention centers. But this argument really got off of its feet late last month, when we saw people sharing images of children in cages and attributing them to the Trump administration's policies. The problem was these were taken back in 2014. Trump was not president then. He was running a crappy reality television show. A fellow named Barack Obama was president then. And as I understand it, the law which allows these separations to occur in these cases dates back to 1996. 2 more presidents ago, Clinton and Bush. So this whole debate started off with emotionally misleading propaganda being used, again, by activists, but also by the mainstream media, and that's where I start to care. Now, this photo in particular was, again, taken June 12th, according to DHS and ICE, and it really became sort of the symbolic image meant to give a face to children who were separated from their parents at the border. There were speeches in Congress where blown up images of this pretty little girl crying were used, again, for emotional manipulation. Now, again, if you use it in the halls of Congress to do something, that's one thing. There's no expectation of integrity in Congress, trust me. But there is with the mainstream media. The ante got up this week when Time magazine, you'll see it here, Time magazine published this week's issue online first before it went to print, and really a striking image of this little girl looking at an uncaring President Trump who is saying, "Welcome to America." The article goes on to decry the president's policy, again, since reversed by executive order, to automatically separate children from their parents when the parents are caught trying to cross into the U.S. illegally. The image is powerful. Gosh knows, how could you not look at this and not have an emotional reaction? It's very effective. It belongs in a political campaign. It does not belong on the cover of Time magazine, one of the most iconic mainstream media outlets out there. Time magazine's covers are part of American pop culture. Part of that, though, is the expectation that they are presenting information honestly. They are not. This is frickin' horse squeeze. Why? Well, as it turns out, some intrepid reporters out there, I don't even know if they were reporters, it might have been just bloggers, quickly discovered that the 2-year-old Honduran girl featured here had never been separated from her parents. Story in the Daily Mail, UK publication last night, had an interview with the girl's father, who explained the situation. This was an attempt at economic migration. Had absolutely nothing to do with the separation of children at the border whose parents are suspected of trying to enter the U.S. illegally. This was something else entirely. Well, as we continued on earlier today, CBS News, much to their credit, really the only mainstream news outlet that has really issued a mea culpa on this. They interviewed the ICE agent who is featured in the series of pictures. He said the encounter was over the mother being searched as part of a routine border search, and the mother, Sandra Maria Sanchez, was illegally re-entering the U.S. after she was previously deported in 2013. So the iconic image of the separations was never separated. Now, you can say, what difference does that make? Well, it makes all the difference in the world. Mainstream media, if they are going to continue to call themselves fair and unbiased, have to be, wait for it, fair and unbiased. They're not. Again, this type of photo and emotional manipulation belongs with political campaigns. It belongs with nonprofits who are advocating for or against a position. Even sitting members of Congress can use this type of tactic, I think, with a certain amount of insulation from responsibility, but not the mainstream media. As most of you know, I spent, I would say, nearly 30 years in what we would call the mainstream media. And once upon a time, they had standards. They had legendary standards. I'll never forget in college, we're talking mid-1980s here, professor passed along the story of a San Francisco Chronicle reporter who was covering a warehouse fire early to mid-70s. He was at the scene, jotting down notes, talking to officials, getting the information. Went back to the paper, wrote the story up. Well, it was he got rained on pretty significantly while he was there, and during the course of the story, he mentioned that it was raining. Copy editor said, no, we can't run this. Why? You did not attribute the fact that it was raining. Well, I was there. Doesn't matter. You need official confirmation on that. So the reporter had to call the fire district chief in San Francisco to get confirmation that it was raining at the fire he was just covering. As I understand it, the story went through. Now, is that extreme? Yes, of course it's extreme. More than a little silly. But it demonstrates a commitment to the truth that simply does not exist anymore. Since we're talking about the area of photography, I'll pass along another story. Again, anecdotal, but the source is a professor, so I feel sure this is true. This is, I think, more late 70s. Associated Press. Wasn't even a hard news story. It was a nature shoot and a landscape shot by a photographer. I wish I had the picture because it would show you the evidence there. Well, evidently, the photographer, for purely aesthetic purposes, cropped it a little bit to knock out some trees, make the picture appear more even. Again, had zero impact on the picture other than it being cropped. He submitted it. It went for AP publication, but he never told his copy editor, apparently, that he had cropped the picture, even innocuously. Well, as my understanding, he was suspended for several weeks simply because he did not tell his copy editor about a extremely minor alteration he made to a photograph. Again, you can call it anal retentive, you can call it what you want, but you better call it honest. We do not see that anymore. Instead, we see the mainstream media rushing to get stuff out there first for pure emotional manipulation. I mean, even the image that started all this young boy in a cage in Texas, remember this picture? The one that was shared in early June, maybe late May? This one right here? Yeah, this image is bull too. Turns out that this little fellow in the cage was part of a protest of the immigration policy that we're talking about. He was not actually in a cage because he had been separated from his parents. He was part of a protest. Obviously, he didn't look like he was any too pleased with it either. I've already seen the apologists say, well, this could have been the reaction of a child who was separated, so therefore time was perfectly within their rights to put it on the cover. No, they're not. No, they are not. Hell, if they're going to do that, they could put this kid on the cover with Trump. See what I'm saying? Integrity. Again, it's one thing if the Republican National Committee uses imagery to emotionally manipulate. That's what political campaigns do. I don't like it, but that's what they do. It's not supposed to be what the mainstream media does. And as we continue at a cheetah-like pace down this path, I have to wonder where the hell it's going to end. It's Friday, so I'm going to start drinking here shortly. You've been watching Chuck's Common Sense. Have a great weekend.